Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Gracious Hope Podcast. I am Pastor Red, and today we are stepping into a conversation that touches the church, the nation, the home, and the hidden places of the human heart. Let me start with a question here that can sit with you for a moment. When a nation keeps repeating the same pain, is it only a policy problem or is it also a leadership problem? And when leadership fails, is it merely a lack of skill or is it a lack of character? Now, in our homeland, Liberia, and across the African context of leadership, we have watched or seen leadership wear many titles. Some leaders have served with sacrifice, others have served themselves, and some have spoken like shepherds. Others have moved like hired hands. And in the middle of all of that, God still calls leaders not to perform, but to steward, not to impress, but to rebuild. And so today, our special guest is a respected pastor, theologian, teacher, and public moral voice. Reverend Dr. Samuel B. Reeves Jr. is the senior pastor of Providence Baptist Church in Monrovia, Liberia. He is also the author of a biblically grounded and culturally honest work called Surveying the Leadership Landscape. Now, this is not a statistics or basic statistical survey. This is a pastoral and theological survey, a spiritual assessment of leadership measured against scripture, accountability, and the fear of God. Dr. Reeves would like to say welcome to the Gracious Hope podcast today. And it's a pleasure to see you here on our podcast.
Thank you very much. And it's good to be here with your audience. It is my pleasure, as late as it is in Monrovia, Liberia, but I am glad to be with you tonight.
Indeed. And before we begin, I want to say this to all of our listeners right now. This conversation or dialogue is not meant to embarrass anyone about leadership. It is only meant to awaken us as Liberians. Because if we can name what is broken, we can also name what God can rebuild. And that is why we come here with a heart of compassion, a strong conviction to express our faith through writing, through speech, and through reaching out to those who are in need of the word of God this particular time in our history. So we submit all to our Lord, who gives us light, who gave us the courage to be honest in our conversations, and also gave us the courage to lead servants in his name. And so then we'll be looking at Dr. Reeves' book. It can be found on Amazon, and he has copies at the church in Monrovia, Liberia. That is the historic Providence Baptist Church. And so that's what we'll be talking about. Now, Dr. Reeves, the title catches attention right away when someone sees that, Surveying the Leadership Landscape. Now, some people will hear the word survey and think about research data, but your work is something else. And in your own words, can you let our listeners know what is this survey all about and why did you feel it was necessary or compare you as a burden to express your sermon series into a book, or a combination of your series of sermon into a book?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, that is an intriguing, interesting title. But let me put that in context. Go back to 2005, because that's the context. That's where this comes from. I had just moved back to Liberia after being a pastor and a student in the U.S. for a number of years. Been called to Providence Baptist Church as its senior pastor. And I came back in February of 2005. And I believe we had our general elections in November of that same year. Prior to the elections, I was engaged and approached by people at church, on the streets, wherever I found myself. and folks had asked the question among the about 20 something candidates that we had running for elections that year, who should I vote for? And it became overbearing. I was wondering, wow, people are asking me to actually tell them who to vote for. And many of these people were also members of our congregation. And so Providence Baptist Church, again, is a large church, a historic church. Also, the context of Providence politically is also there. There are members of the church that belong to almost every political persuasion and political parties in Liberia. And I said, boy, I would get in real trouble if I was telling people, giving them who I thought I would vote for or who I thought they should vote for. So I started to think about it, and I started to pray about how do I tell them what kind of leader to look for instead of saying vote for John or vote for Mary. And so I took some time and I prayed. I remember I was on my way back to the U.S. That year prior to the elections, and sitting on the SN Brussels flight from Monrovia to Brussels, I got an inspiration, and I took a napkin that was given to me, one of my meals, and the inspiration was this theme, surveying the leadership landscape. And so the thought was to look through the Bible, also look through the biblical landscape, then look through our political landscape, and see how I could find what the Bible had to say about what good, godly, biblical leadership is all about, and who are some of those great leaders in the Bible. So, in short, that's basically how the title was derived. This book that we're working on, talking about tonight, is part of a series, and so I believe the Lord has laid on my heart to develop a series of leadership manuals. This one is the second book in the series. This one is the series. The general title for the series is Surveying the Leadership Landscape. This book is the essential characteristics of leadership. The first one was values about leadership. So the subtitles this each book land.
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah. So that's sort of the context out of which the book comes to us. So this is the second book in the series,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe sometime this year, God's willing, by the end of this year, a third book in the same series um, will come up. I strongly believe it's based on the series that I'm working on right now out of the book of Philippians. I did the book of Ephesians last year, and so between these two books, I believe the third book on the series, Surveying the Leadership Landscape, will be written. So
Wow.
that's the context out of which that general title comes, and so it's based on helping, at least then, helping people to find, decide who to vote for in the 2005 general elections here in Liberia.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go back quickly because, and I did the best I could to not tell anybody of the 22 candidates vote for Mary or don't or vote for John. No, I lay out, and in that first book, it was basically just a series of sermons based
Mm-hmm.
on leadership characteristics and essential values of leadership. So I presented people like Esther, like Isaac, like Moses, and other people. Even Nehemiah, presented Nehemiah in
Mm-hmm.
that book. But for me, what I really, really thank God for was, and still is, people approached me after the elections and said to me, "Thank you for the series." And I said, "Oh, you're welcome." And they said, "No, because I was thinking about voting for John, and I voted for Mary. Or I was thinking about
Mm-hmm.
voting for Sarah, and I voted for Esther." And I said, "Amen. That was the intent. The intent for you to find out what it takes to be a good godly leader, and hopefully vote for that person who you think would be
Hmm.
a better leader for our country. So
Okay. Well, I mean, this is spiritual and moral evaluation, looking at your journey from the U.S., from a ministry, and then going back home to become a pastor, senior pastor of the historic Providence Baptist Church. I mean, you are holding leadership up to scripture and then asking, does it look like God's heart, or does it look like human heart or human
exactly.
appetite? So let me press you gently right here, okay? When you survey leadership in our country, Liberia, and even beyond, what patterns concern you the most?
Well, I think like what I was and still trying to help people understand through the biblical prism, that I present all the time is the things that I list in the different books, the different series. But I think one of the biggest thing is character. You know, character, competence, and I think in fact the first book, what I did was I went through those list, issue of what are some of the most important things, but what are the things that are out there that we can lay the Bible against, so that people can see a fuller context of who a leader should
Mhm.
be and how he or she should present him or herself. So if I was to call something out, I would say character, because I believe that's the grounding, that's the foundation. The other things are built on that. A leader with good godly character um, can do the kinds of things that God would call him or her to do.
Mhm. Well, that is a sobering word. Well, you see, because when leadership normalizes self interest, the people start believing that suffering is normal too. And so, here in your book, you present
Of course.
Nehemiah as a leadership mirror. Now, a major part of your framework is Nehemiah, especially Nehemiah chapter 2, starting with verse 1, verse 2, 3, all the way to 8. You return to that moment when Nehemiah is faced, or when he was facing a moment that his countenance, his face was sad before the king. And then the king asks, what is wrong? He prays. Then he speaks with courage. Then asks for what is needed to rebuild his hometown or city. Now, I may ask a question, why Nehemiah? And what does he reveal about leadership that our generation, Liberia today, cannot afford to forget?
Excellent, excellent. So after I did the sermon series on Nehemiah, um, I had learned these four essential characteristics of who a leader really is, that has also shaped my own leadership. And so I thought, as I was thinking about the next book in this series of surveying the leadership landscape, I believe I was also inspired to take those four essential characteristics and lay them against the life of Nehemiah. And so I believe Nehemiah's life and journey exemplifies these four leadership characteristics. And so I must have also been in uh, one of my places of reading and studying, and then it dawned on me that these four characteristics of leadership that I believe I've read and learned and listened to some from leaders like Bill Hybels and the others of his likes, um,
Mhm.
allow me to say, come on, there's something about Nehemiah's life and that journey back to Jerusalem, you know, from where he was working in Susa, that allowed me to go back and say, okay, now I'm going to take uh, Nehemiah's life and journey and lay it against these four characteristics. And here they are. The first
Mhm.
one is self leadership. So a leader must know how to lead him or herself. Second one is leading up. Um, do we know how to lead those who are in authority over us? The third one is leading laterally. How do we lead our peers, our equals? And then the fourth one is the one that most of us are familiar with. And when you talk about leadership, sometimes that's where everybody goes. Is leading leading down. you know so we lead people, and people look up to us. And
Mhm.
if I believe Bill Hybert asked a question one time, and at one of his leadership summit in Barrington, Illinois, that
Mhm.
if you were to ask for the percentage of if you were to put these four down and ask people to measure them, you know, how much time or what the level of percentage that we will put to. And most people will put leading down
Mhm.
to be almost 50 or more percent, and we come to realize that's really not the case. That's just a fraction of our general leadership.
Mhm.
And so I've come to believe that these four things are very important. And if we learn to lead ourselves, if you can't lead yourself, who can you lead? You can't give people what you don't have. So if we learn to lead ourselves, then we know what it takes, and then we can require of others what we have
Mhm.
required of ourselves. So here Nehemiah, you know, felt this call again. There was not an ambition that Nehemiah had. He felt this call from God after he heard about the destruction in Jerusalem. Nehemiah consulted the Lord first. Nehemiah had to make sure that this was a calling from God, that this was not
Mhm.
something he got happy, he had some money, he was able to do, because all of those two things I just called will only take you a certain distance. And most of the distance you will still be found wanting. And so Nehemiah had to realize, is this a call from God? I need to talk to God first, and I need to
Mhm.
make sure. Now, if I'm sure that this is a call from God, it says something about who I am, my calling, what defines me on this journey. Because if I'm not sure of who I am and who calls me, or why am I doing this, then somebody else will define the journey and or the call for me. So leading oneself is very, very important. So that's important. So Nehemiah had to do that first,
Mhm.
and then Nehemiah had to lead up. He was working for the king. He needed permission to get a vacation letter to go back to Jerusalem. And in that, Nehemiah had to find the right time to ask the king, so that the king would give him what you were permitted to speak to the king. And if you spoke out of turn,
Mhm.
your head would go. So all of the wisdom that is required in all of that. So Nehemiah had to lead himself, had to have a good relationship with God. Know, was this just an ambition, or was this a calling from God? And then he had to lead up also. So he had authority over him. He had to get permission from the king. And Nehemiah went to all of these cities.
Mhm.
And because he led up well, he got from the king letters through each of those cities to get, and I put it in our context, to get cement from Cementco, to get
Mhm.
plywood from the plywood company, to get whippers to whip the grass when he got to Jerusalem. Everything he needed, he got, because he was able to lead his those in authority over him. And that's important. And most
Yeah.
of us who are leaders don't know how to do that. We don't know how uh, 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 to perform for the people who we are working for.
Mhm.
uh, because if you perform, and performance and the execution of your task is one of the best way you can also lead the people who are over you. If you're given a piece of job and you do that job well, and you do it with excellence, in fact, you do a little more. If you do a little more than is required, you do a
Mhm.
little more than is required. When you need some help from those who are in authority over you, come on, between you and those in your orbit who work for the same authority, who never complete their task on time, who never go above and beyond of what is asked of them. When both of you go to ask people in authority over you, who you think you're going to find favor with? They're going to find favor with you. So Nehemiah did that well. When he went to the king, he got from the king what he needed. And
Yes.
that allowed him to get all of what he needed as he made his way to Jerusalem. When he got to Jerusalem, what it took to rebuild the city, he got because he led up well. And then Nehemiah, when he got to the city, he met, qualified people. In fact, on his way to the city, getting to the city, he met qualified people, people who were as astute as he was, and charismatic as he was, and educated as he was, so to speak. So he couldn't play them like they were small boys. He had to speak to them like equals. And so
Yeah.
he had to also learn how to lead them, his ability to deal with them, Nehemiah's ability to deal with opposition. So you got other pastors who are on the same level with you. You got other political leaders who are at the same level you, who may be your opposition. Nehemiah faced opposition. How do you lead them? You don't want God to zap all of them. You need them to remind you of your own shortcomings. And then there Nehemiah got to the city. These people were waiting, were waiting to be inspired, to be put to work. And then Nehemiah then had to now lead down, to inspire. Leading down is offering an inspiration to these people who are looking for something, looking for change, are looking for influence, to be taken from point A to point B. So here Nehemiah takes these 4 leadership characteristics. Learn how to lead himself. He knew who he was. It was not just some kind of ambition. It was a call from God. He
Yes.
learned how to lead up. He learned how to lead laterally, his equals and peers. And then he learned how to lead down. This is exactly what we need in Liberia.
Yeah. I mean, Nehemiah is a very interesting character, and I love that you explain the preparation of Nehemiah from the start to the end. I love that you highlighted the order. Nehemiah does not start with resources. He starts with the burden, the
No.
desire, to do it. And then he does not start
Mm-hmm.
with speeches. He starts with prayer.
No.
Then he moves with
Yeah.
courage and clarity. Wow.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this way for our listeners. What is the difference between a leader who is merely ambitious and a leader who is genuinely burdened?
Amen. I think I mentioned some of that, but it goes
Yeah.
back to exactly what I said. The difference is, I believe ambition is self-driven most of the time. And a divine burden comes from above. And so here you see Nehemiah, he's told about the destruction in the city. Nehemiah will put a banner out and say, I'm running to be the next mayor of the city of Jerusalem. I can solve all your problems. Come follow me. I have a 3-point plan for reconstruction of Jerusalem. No, he stopped. He went to God. Lord, I'm from this place. I've heard of the condition in this place. I believe partnering with you, this place can be changed. So you see, it was not just an ambition. And I think sometimes most
Yes.
of our leaders, and nothing's wrong with ambition. Ambition is good.
Mhm.
So, but most times it comes from us, and if it's not tied into a divine call, and so I think those two can be tied in also. I can feel a sense of ambition, but if I allow it to be grounded in a divine
Mhm.
call from God, it goes a long way. Yet
Right.
Nehemiah took it to the length. He went to God. I want to make sure this is something that I can do that will bring glory to your name, even with the sense of ability, with the gifts and abilities that you've given to me. Then Nehemiah
Yes.
follows these 4 characteristics, principles.
I agree. I agree. And that distinction can save a nation like our country, Liberia. And the reason is because ambition wants applause, not the positive
Right.
ambition, but
Most of
self-seeking
the time.
ambition. They want the
Mhm.
applause. Burden
And
wants
want it all the
repair.
and want it all the time. See me,
Yes,
see
yes.
me.
And so I hear you emphasizing character. Now, most of our brothers and sisters, they want to seek higher aspiration to be public servants in our country. And one of your repeated themes is character before office, and you talk about a leader leading himself spiritually and morally before attempting to lead others. Now, in
Exactly.
our culture, Liberian culture, where people chase titles quickly,
Hmm.
what does it actually mean to lead yourself before you lead a church or an institution or even a nation?
Exactly. But let me go back to that issue of ambition, that is self-driven and divine burden that comes from God. You see, it's a, as I say, it's a calling, but that calling, the difference is the calling. But that calling also comes through what I like to see uh, as selfless service. It
Mhm.
comes through selfless service, it comes through self-sacrifice, and it comes through driven, purpose driven. That divine burden that comes from God has a purpose to it, and the larger purpose is God's glory and the advancement of the people and the transformation of the place that you call to go cause this change and influence. And so when that becomes the most important thing, then you can see how it drives itself into the issue of character before office. When it's ambition driven,
Mhm.
then it's the office that comes before the character. What I do, the means to an end. I don't care. I can live any kind of way. We can enact laws so that 95% of the country's resources are consumed by 5% of the population, and 5% of the population lives on 95% of the population lives on 5% of the resources. So you see, the difference is also tied to that. If it's just ambition, then come on. I get, in Liberia, we say the goat eats where you tie it. So the goat is
Mhm.
only concerned about itself. So the challenge here is what it means to really lead with character coming before office, and the issue of leading yourself and morally. I say it has to do with self assurance, a certain resolve in God's call on your life. There you go again. And when you are not defined and shaped by what others think of you, but what God has called you to do. Listen, one time, I wouldn't call the name of this legislator. It's been many years now. I wouldn't even say in which one of the government between President Sirleaf, President we are, and this current government. I had a conversation with someone, and the conversation was about why you keep increasing your salaries in the House of Representatives, in the national legislature, uh, and not increasing the salaries of the people who are doing the work. And this person said to me, because they always come to us, we got to pay the children's school fees, we got to send the children to the parents to hospital, we got to do this. And I said, I see, you got it wrong. Your job is not to pay somebody's hospital bill. Your job is to make sure that qualified doctors and the kinds of hospital medical facilities that the country needs are here, so that they can go to those places. Because when you continue to pay the school fees, all you're doing is
Mhm.
enriching yourselves. You get them
Yeah.
pennies, and they depend on you. So the next time they have to re-elect you again. No, that's not your job. Your job is to create an enabling environment so that people can succeed, people can grow and thrive, and their gifts and abilities can be put to use for the advancement of the country. But again, if it's all about just ambition, it's all about the office and has nothing to do
Mhm.
with character, there you go.
It's true. I agree. I agree. And as we see here, we talk about preparation, having the right character, and then taking office can empower you to lead, particularly if your faith is grounded, in your Lord. And so if
Mhm.
we see a leader who is solely about seeking leadership in a selfish or ambitious way to accommodate his or her own desires, and then the obvious answer would be what happens when that person gets power. Then that'll be a tragedy that we often, even see in our society today, because
Especially,
power. Uh-huh.
let me just jump in, especially in our context where you have senators in power for 9 years. If this person is all about just the office and no character, they enrich themselves in 9 years and they say, to heck with everybody else. After 9 years, I'm a millionaire and I can go sit down, and so that's one of the reasons we need to reduce the tenure to 4 and 2, so that if you don't perform in 2 years, or if you don't perform in 4 years, we can change you right away. But
Yeah.
at the state we are in now, there's no incentive for performance.
Yes, yes. And power does not create the problem. Power reviews the problem. Now,
Exactly.
I will take a quick break here for some of you just joining us. This is the Gracious Hope Live podcast, and I'm here with the senior pastor of the historic Providence Baptist Church in Monrovia, Liberia, Reverend Dr. Samuel B. Reeves Jr. And we are talking about leadership, surveying the leadership landscape of our country. It is a compilation of a teaching series or sermons. He has a book available at the church. You can also get it on Amazon.com if you need a copy. And so make your voice heard. If you have any comments, please go ahead and you can just go in the comment section below and do that. Okay, that's a copy right there. I think this way you can turn it this way a little bit on the other side. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, let's see. Okay, and you can get a copy from his church. You get a hard copy from there. Also, you can get it from Amazon in various formats as
So
well.
this is the first of these two of the series. This is the first one. So this one is indispensable qualities of leadership.
Book there, and we need leadership in every institution, including the church and our political governance as well. And so we'll take a short break here. When we come back, I'm going to be gently pressing Dr. Reeves with a practical question, particularly when we're looking at young leaders today, those who want to be leaders in the future. They are young listening here. They will have a word from Pastor Reeves in just a second here. We'll be right back. Don't go away. This is the Gracious Hope Live podcast. All right, we are back. Now, let's be practical here with a question. Now, if a young leader came to you and said, I feel called to be a leader, but I do not know how to develop character, what will you tell them to practice first? Reverend Reeves? All right, so we are back. Are you hearing me, Dr. Reeves? Okay. I think he's been sidetracked there for a little bit. But if you, this is the second segment of the
Try to call
Gracious
me.
Hope podcast. And if you're just joining us, we'd like to say welcome. And we are talking about his book, and it's about surveying the leadership landscape.
Mhm.
It is series that he's releasing, compilation of his sermons, and you can get a copy of that book on Amazon.com. It is available, and I believe that you will have a gem of wisdom from that book because I went through it and I learned a whole lot, and so it prompted this interview or conversation with Dr. Reeves, surveying the leadership landscape in our country. And so, if you can share our link here with your friends, your families, and your loved ones, just click that link, and we will be glad to um, express what we're talking about here, but leadership to a friend of yours or the relatives of yours, or it could be your community group on social media as well. Okay, so Reverend Reeves, are you back? The screen looks frozen. I'm not sure if you are hearing me. Let's see here. All right, screen is frozen here, I believe a little bit. We'll be right back. Let's take this break. Okay, so we are back. Okay, so now leadership. I was asking Dr. Reeves about leadership when it comes to young people who are aspiring to be leader, and what would be his practical advice uh, and teaching about developing character. And that was a question, but I think his screen got frozen, and so hopefully he'll be back in here. But you can opine, okay? For all of you who are listening right now, you can make your voice heard. I know some of you have been making comments here, and I can put down the screen. Reverend Dr. Reeves was one of my icons growing up in Painesville City. Oh, thank you, Dr. Clarence R. Pearson Sr. Thank you for making such a remarkable comment. And we have others here who are also watching, making comments as well. Awesome, awesome, because they are listening to our podcast, and the subject matter seemed very interesting to most of you. Great explanation from Joseph Hicks. Thank you, Joseph, for being part of this podcast today. Oh, okay, so let us get back to Dr. Reeves to see if he's okay. So you're back. Are you hearing me? Okay, I'm not sure why the screen is frozen here. Dr. Reeves, are you there? I'm not sure why, but the internet in Liberia probably is not is going back and forth. Some technical difficulties, but hopefully he will get on. All right, thank you, Joseph Hill, for saying kudos, boss. But what we're talking about here is the book that has so many things in there that can help you to understand the characteristics of leadership. And that is a good thing about it, because without understanding the characteristics of leadership, it is hard to determine how well will you develop your own character to be a good leader. Okay, so let us take a break here. Reverend Reese, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? We are back on the
Hello.
air. Yes, hi. Yes, we are live.
Okay.
We are back. Okay, I believe your screen went a little bit. It kind of froze a little bit. But if you can hear me, let us get back on it. Can you hear me now?
I can. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, okay. So now the practical question is that if a young leader came to you and said, "I feel called to be a leader," but I don't know how to develop character. What would be the first thing? Or what will you tell them to practice first?
Good question. I mean, I believe those the Lord calls, He equips, and sometimes we have the gifts and abilities inside of us that we don't even know we have. And then how do we? There's several different ways to identify. In fact, it reminds me what we do at church. I discover a gifting inventory
Hmm.
that I used when I first pastored a church in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in the USA. I didn't believe it at first until I took the gifting inventory and I realized that everything that they said was true about me, and
Hmm.
so I've taken it over and over again, and so I've become a believer. So I gave that to all my leaders that work with me, and also everybody at church. And I
Hmm.
say that, and people we take it, and it's true. You answer about 125 questions, some of the same questions repeatedly, and you get to identify the gifts and abilities that God has placed inside of you. And sometimes people see things in us that we don't see in ourselves. You know how you were growing up, and somebody said, "Wow, you're an eloquent speaker, but you never see it in yourself. You just you think you're just doing your colloquy, and somebody said, but your diction are really distinct, and so there's several ways to do that. So sometimes people need to stop and look deep in themselves, and then when you're in a community, that community can come around with and help you realize what you you defining yourself. That's why it's as much as we want to help that person, you want to help that person do it themselves, realize who they are, what they have, you know, so that again at the end of the day, excuse me, at the end of the day, that person is defined by who God has made them. Because again, like Nehemiah, if you don't know who you are, everybody else will tell you who you should be.
Hmm.
And so when that is firm, uh, then the other things can be built. The other things that you need can build on that.
Hmm. And that brings into the whole understanding of discipleship, and it's not about performance but discipleship, and that is also spiritual formation and not
Right.
about popularity. So when it comes to prayerful and courageous leadership, you emphasize prayer in your book, but you do not present prayer as an excuse for passivity. Now
Of
in
course.
Nehemiah,
Hmm.
prayer and action walk together.
Yes.
How do you teach leaders to pray with seriousness and still make hard decisions with courage?
Because sometimes we overly spiritualize things. So you go pray. So I pray and I sit home and I expect God to work a miracle. No, the miracle is with God. God does the miracle. There's a part that we have to do. In fact, I like to put it this way: God has his piece of the work to do. I have my piece to do. God's not going to do my piece. I am for sure not able to do God's piece. God's able to do mine, but He's not going to do it. So I must put together a resume, present myself uh, eloquently as possible with what I know, and watch God fill in the gaps. You know, so right, prayer and intentionality. I put it that way. Go,
Hmm.
both of them go hand in hand. So we got to work to trust God, uh, and miracles still happen. You know,
Hmm.
miracles happen, but sometimes we just want miracles to happen. You sit at home, you want a wife, so she will come find you. She got to see you as an independent, good looking guy who carries himself well, able to provide. Then she's gonna be attracted to you. Otherwise, you'll be sitting down looking for a wife until Jesus returns. you know. So yes, so Nehemiah again sets an example. You
Hmm.
pray, you ask God for what you can't do, what you don't have, and God says, "Go with what I've already given to you." Then watch me bring together what you have with what you don't have that I'm responsible for.
Okay. And you also use vivid illustrations about leadership making costly choices, even a picture of breaking down a house to put in the road. Now, that image stays with people. Explain what you mean by that. What kind of courage does nation building require that many leaders avoid?
Okay, go back over the question
I
because
was saying that,
we got
okay,
a few
I
seconds.
mean, it was a vivid illustrations about leadership making costly choices,
Mhm.
even the picture of,
Right.
breaking down a house to put in the road. Okay. That image kind of stay with a lot of people. I just want you to explain what you mean when it comes to the courage. What kind of courage does nation building require that many leaders tend to avoid? What kind of
Too many,
courage?
too many of us who are leaders. Uh, in fact, let me put it in this way. I think a good illustration of what I told a friend of mine when I first moved here, another Baptist pastor, and I was talking about reorganizing the leadership structure of our church, and
Mhm,
I said, we need to put together a department of congregational life, a department that will go out, visit people, make sure people are visited at all levels. And then in that conversation, I said to this pastor friend of mine, I'm gonna make my associate pastor the director of that department because
mhm,
my particular gifts are not right in some of those areas. But this guy who I have as my associate pastor is excellent, excellent, excellent. You know what the guy told me? He said, "Oh, Reverend, that guy will be the most popular guy in your church." Oh." I said, right to the point. My call here as pastor of this church is not to be the most popular person. My call is to make sure this church is the most effective and efficiently run institution and organization, so that
mhm,
when people in this church need to be visited and have their needs met, they will say, Providence Baptist Church was there when I had these needs, and those needs
mhm,
were met, as opposed to saying, Pastor Sam met him. I'm only one person. I don't have all the gifts, so I need to bring around me qualify people. Some of whom would be more qualified than I am in special areas, and there's
mhm,
nothing wrong with that. So we get caught up in the temptation that we need to be the most popular person, and so you want to do all the hospital visitations, you want to do all the funerals, all the prison visitations, and sometimes you're just not a gifted person in some of those particular areas, and you don't perform well, and it doesn't lead to excellence
mhm,
in your organization. So the sacrifice of letting others use the gifts and abilities that they have, so that your organization and institution can grow to the level that God, you know, has for it, is tied in to some of those painful, necessary choices and decisions. And one of the other things that I've done, and it's not just said at Providence, it's because of that. Anybody and most people who are 65, say 70 years and younger,
mhm.
might not see me in a visitation when they need it. So we try to make sure there's care groups and home groups and cycles and bands for both women and men in our church.
Mhm.
And so then I say anybody who's 70 and 75 and above, those are the ones that I would visit. One, because people at that age, you can't change their mindset about what the pastor needs to do anyway.
Yeah.
But in the same time, you can set a system up so that the pastor hasn't doesn't have to visit 2,000 plus people. He soon die, and you say there goes another fool who thought he knew it all and tried to do it all. So teamwork is important. With teamwork, it means there are some painful, necessary choices that you have to make that lift other people up,
Yes.
not necessarily to put you down, but lift them up so that your institution can be efficient and effective in living out its purpose.
Yes.
uh, and it's also courageous. It's courageous. People think it's not. It's courageous. That's good governance and real leadership that you gave, because you were putting people in these places with the gifts. And listen, it's also tied to what I've also learned, what is called out there as the 360-degree leadership. That leadership happens not just at the top. That's another, you know, fallacy that we have. Just like leadership, that we only lead people who are down on us. That leadership only happens at the top, and those organizations that only have leadership happening at the top go nowhere fast. But there's something called 360-degree leadership, where at every level of your organization, you need leaders there, and your organization can blow up. You need leaders at the bottom. You need leaders at the top, on the side. You need leaders in the north, the west, the east, and south. And leaders, when leadership happens like that, it becomes a conglomeration of growth and transformation that are happening in your organization all at the same time.
Yeah, and that's right there is the difference between leadership and politics.
Yeah.
Politics protects comfort, leadership accepts costs. And
Yes.
so it brings us to public accountability and the common good. Now,
Yep.
your survey calls leaders back to public accountability, not accountability as punishment, but accountability as stewardship. Now, in
Right.
our Liberian context, accountability can be resisted because it feels like disrespect. How do we build
Right.
or rebuild a culture where accountability is seen as responsibility and not insult?
Right. So I think until we have leaders, or those who are gifted and need to find out what it really takes, until we have leaders who learn private spiritual accountability. Again, it goes back to, who am I? Am I in partnership with God to do this task, this work that He's given me? And yet, we're
Mhm,
speaking from a Christian uh, theological perspective, but I believe it can be applied to people of any other religion. You know, so
mhm,
so in this case, is this thing that I'm doing? Am I called to do it? Because it makes a difference. So that's private spiritual accountability. It's not there. I need to find I'm accountable to God first. I need to know for sure this is what God wants me, because when the going gets tough and hell breaks loose, so to speak, if I,
mhm,
as the leader, can't find somewhere to lay my head and find consolation and find confidence in this competent God who has called me. And by the way, that's the sermon. That's the theme for my sermon at the Methodist Church tomorrow. If I
uh,
can, confidence in God's competence.
mhm.
If I don't have a private spiritual accounting, then I can't realize the confidence that I ought to have in a God who is competent to take me to this place that He has called me. And then how do we also build systems that do away with impunity? you know, when there's no consequence for people misbehavior, then impunity rules the day. And boy, you know what that does with public accounting, lack of stewardship, uh, and all of that. So people, it's about my power. You know who I
Mhm,
am.
mhm,
I am the guy. I'm the legislator from this place. I'm the guy who takes the third lane when there is no emergency. But I expect everybody else in the country to park the car and let me just go on my merry way, even if I'm just going to a pleasure, uh, uh, to some form of pleasure, and you going to do some work. And that has been my experience many times with people in the House of Representatives, people who are senators, other government ministers that I meet in the third lane. I said, no, I'm not going to move my
mhm.
car. You get off and go on the right. You drive responsibly. And if you can't drive responsibly, maybe you ought not to be in those offices. And so I've had encounters, but most people just get afraid and they move their car, and that
Yeah.
becomes the norm. So then the thing that in fact, you use the word disrespect. I had an encounter on the third lane with a legislator, and I told him you're driving irresponsibly, and he didn't know the difference between being calling someone irresponsible and driving irresponsibly. He went down on the curb and called the police officer and said he didn't know who I was. He said that man in that car is. He says I'm irresponsible, and and the police officer knew me. So when he got to the car, he said, "That man in that car." The legislator said yes. He said no. That man would not. That man didn't say that. And so I repeated it. I said, "You're driving irresponsibly, and if you don't know the difference, then that's up to you."
Hmm.
So he felt disrespected. Come on, you're doing the wrong thing. How you feel disrespected?
Yeah, and how should the church speak to public leadership without becoming partisan and without becoming silent?
Speak the truth. Speak the truth. I would do that all the time. In fact, I've been called enemy of the state and other things, but that doesn't stop me. I'm not afraid to speak the truth. When I speak the truth, I trust God to take care of the rest. So just speak the truth. Again, there's no other way around it. There's no way around it. How do we keep the city clean? Stop putting trash on the floor in the street.
Hmm.
City ordinances must be kept. Why all these churches? I'm a pastor, so I say with the churches. Why do we put our speakers outside our church buildings when we're having crusades and we're having late night revivals? Do we not respect the communities that we live in and those people who live in there? The same people we want to come to Jesus Christ and to attend our churches, but yet we disrespect them so much. So just speak the truth. But I told you again, that happened in my community. And when my wife and I engaged, the guy, he looked at me and said, "You don't know God." I said, "Thank you. I don't know God, but you will move that speaker or you will stop that service. If not, I will call the police or go to the city hall." So it's speak the truth and and
Yeah.
and be resolved and let the chip fall where they may.
Yeah, and that is a needed word because silence can become complicity and noise can become
Right,
confusion. Now, the
right.
church must be clear, humble, and brave to speak the truth. And this brings us to leadership in the church and stewardship as well. So let's come closer to the church for a moment here. Now, you call leadership a secret stewardship, not a power grab. What are the warning signs that a pastor or church leader is drifting from stewardship into control?
Okay. That's because sometimes
How do we tell? How do you see some warning signs when the church leader or the pastor drifting from being a steward of Christ into being a control person?
and one of the ways, some of the ways that I like to see that is that that person become more selfish, self-centered, narcissistic. Those behaviors are the ones
Hmm.
that are prevalent in how to do things, even in the church. And sometimes you can't even believe that happens in the church. That selfish, self-centered, narcissistic behavior, the lack of self-sacrifice, uh, uh, the teamwork and accountability structure around are not there. So how do you even build a structure that protect people? You need teamwork. You need some form of accountability structure around your leaders. And so what I propose and when I teach and talk about this is, it doesn't matter who you are, how much you know. You need to be accountable to somebody because God never gives all of us all the gifts. There are people around us who have better are gifted with better portion of the gifts that
Hmm.
we need for the work that we've been called to do, but God didn't give it to us. So go find those people and put them around you. And some of them we need to be accountable to so that they hold us in
Hmm.
in check and in account for what God has called us to be good stewards of. So uh, um, even in the church, man, it got to be about me, myself. You know, we never, and sometimes that's why mm, there's no teamwork. That's why we don't build the next generation. And sometimes, most importantly, that's why we never have an exit plan. How many
Hmm.
leaders have exit plans? Okay, I don't know how long God's going to keep me here, but I ought to have an exit plan because I know he's not going to keep me here forever. For that's one thing I'm sure of. So I got to start training the next cadre of leaders, not training tomorrow's leaders today, training today's leaders today,
Mm-hmm.
so that if something happens to me tomorrow, there are people who are as qualified or better qualified than I am to take this piece of the job or this calling that God has laid on me and take it to
Mm-hmm.
the next level. When I'm gone, he's in charge now. He might decide that at 10%, I've performed what he's called me to do, and he says it's time to go home. Who am I to say no? Ain't nothing I can do about it. And but if I have not trained the next, if I not train the next group of leaders or put the place in a condition where there are just leaders streaming around to fill these positions, then I've partly failed without having a succession plan, without finding
Yeah.
people to replace me. I've actually have failed that
Yeah.
organization.
I agree. I agree. And that is why also in the church, like you're talking about teamwork and structures, it can help to have the church develop, healthy leadership structures that protect the flock and keep the mission of Christ pure. And that is, shepherding with wisdom, not just preaching on Sunday, but protecting people Monday through Saturday. So when it comes to leadership and community development, you are also known for community development work through Providence Baptist Church, including social support and institutional building. Now, some people separate ministry from social responsibility. Others turn the church into an NGO and forget about the gospel of Christ. How do you hold the gospel and community development together without losing the soul of either one of them?
How do you do it?
Yeah.
I believe we're called to a holistic ministry, a ministry that takes care of the mind, body, soul, and spirit.
Hmm.
In fact, all of it is part of the spiritual responsibility that we have. So, uh, you know, hungry people can't hear your gospel as much as they need to. Uh, is not as appealing, but when they're fed and their stomach are full, so to speak, like we say here, the guy's attention is is there.
Hmm.
You know, mothers who have babies. The question is not how they got them, whether in or out of wedlock. If a single mom, has 4 or 5 kids, what time she has to go find a job, to support those kids and take care of herself. The church provides a daycare, something of the like, so that that mom is free to go. That mother sees the church in a different light and sees the Jesus that that church is preaching about in a different light. you
Hmm.
know so these are things that are put around us, that the church ought to be cognizant of its surroundings and the culture, and the gospel can relate to that the gospel can relate to, so that people can see the gospel in light of the holistic need that the gospel speaks of. And so sometimes we're a little, what we say, we so earthly bound with no heavenly good, or we so
Yes.
heavenly good with no we're so heavenly bound with no earthly good. It's both ends. It's not either or.
Yeah. Hmm. And,
Yeah.
and that balance matters because
Yeah.
if we preach Christ but ignore suffering, our message sounds empty. And
Right.
if we serve people but never point them to Christ, our
Christ.
service becomes incomplete. So then it
Incomplete.
brings to the whole question about ordinary citizens and emerging leaders.
Yeah.
One of your most powerful parts of your work is that it does not only speak to presidents and pastors, it speaks to ordinary citizens too. So then the
Yeah. Yeah.
question is, what does leadership look like for the everyday Liberian, the student, the market woman, the civil servant, the father, the mother? What is your call to people who say, I have no title?
Yep, 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 yep. Because leadership is really not about titles. It is about calling. You don't need a title to lead. And this goes to sometimes having great leaders in our institutions and organizations, but because we haven't put a title on their backs, they think that they can't do anything, you know. So they sit around and waiting for us to give them a title. And then sometimes those who have the titles really aren't the leaders, you know, because leadership is about influence. And there are
Mm-hmm.
people in our institutions who have the ability. They're simple people, quote unquote, just for conversation's sake. And they don't have a title, but when they walk into the room, they garner our attention. When they open their mouths, simple things that they will say, we say, wow, that makes so much sense. But they got no title.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, if you are a leader in such an organization, if you're smart enough, you will find those people and bring them around you. uh, Maybe if they need a title, I give them a title so that they get to do the work. But we need to help them understand that the title they are leading without a title around them. If you give them a chance, and that's why I say the importance of having a 360-degree leadership kind of institution. They may not be at the top. Drop them somewhere at the bottom. Drop them somewhere on the side, and see them, see that yeast, you know, take root in that dough, and begins to boom, bake something in the oven of that organization, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So yes, you know, it's not the titles. If you look around, you see people who got no titles, but you see the work they do. Recognize the work, and see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is liberation right there, because when people understand leadership as stewardship, they stop waiting for someone to save them, and they start becoming, servants. Now, as we begin to close our podcast here, I want you to speak directly to three groups, okay? First, to pastors who feel tired and tempted to compromise. Second group, to public leaders who want to do the right thing but feel pressure by a broken system. And the third group, to young leaders who are hungry for impact. What will you say to each group in one strong pastoral appeal? So the first group
To
to pastors,
pastors,
yes.
you
Second,
can't do
public
it alone.
leaders, and the third,
Yes,
young
you can't
people,
do it
young
alone.
leaders.
Yeah, to pastors, you can't do it alone. You don't know it all. Find people who are as good as you are, even more qualified, and bring them around you. In fact, I would say teamwork, teamwork, teamwork. I don't care which denomination you belong to, whether you're a bishop, archbishop, pastor, however you're called. You don't know it all. That title doesn't give you the right. In fact, sometimes it gives us a false impression that we think we know it all. Bring people around you. Realize what your own shortcomings are in whatever area of leadership, and bring the right people with the requisite qualification around you, and befriend them, love them, learn from them as well as they try to learn from you. Build a system that is purpose driven. And I believe our church, I believe, is a biblical principle that we're called to pastor led, and wherever you call the title in your own particular structure, pastor led, staff run, and purpose driven. Our churches biblically are supposed to be that, because it's a leader that God calls with a vision.
Mhm.
But of course, God gives you gifted people to deal with it. So you need a staff, whether they're volunteer, they're paid, and then there's a purpose for why that particular church exists on that street corner. There may be
Mhm.
10 other churches there, but you have a purpose. Identify your purpose and live out that purpose, and watch God do the extraordinary through you. To politicians, you know, and I like to speak maybe specific to ours, because here we said 90%, 95, 96, 97% of those who are politicians come from our churches. So the believers, your call is more than an ambition. See it as a divine call from God to bring transformation to yourself, your community, and to the nation. And when you see that, you rely on God more, and that relationship will help you come together to put together good laws that are based on justice, fair
Mhm.
play, equity, so that people lives are change, and the environment and the communities are transformed. To young people, God has given you gifts and abilities. Don't let anybody tell you what you can't do. Don't let them define you. Nehemiah is a good example. Make sure you have a relationship with God that tells you who you are, that helps you understand the gifts and abilities He's given you. Take those gifts and abilities, look outside the box.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need to do the things that most people think are the most foolish things to do. But those are the things that sometimes God works through to bring transformation and create an environment for us to thrive as young people, to be leaders today, not just making us leaders for tomorrow.
Hmm. Okay, well, Dr. Reeves, thank you. Our conversation has weight, but it also carries hope because the Nehemiah story teaches us that ruins are not the end of the story. Ruins can
Yes.
become the starting place of rebuilding, especially looking at our nation today. To all our listeners, here is a question I want to leave with you. What if God is not only judging our leadership failures, but also inviting us into leadership repentance? Now, if you want to go deeper into that question to find answers, look for Reverend Dr. Samuel B. Reeves Jr.'s Surveying the Leadership Landscape, his pastoral survey of leadership, and also share this particular podcast with a pastor, with a public servant, a student leader, and someone who has lost hope in leadership. And let us have honest conversation that lead to real change in our country. And so the book is available. Can you please show that book on the screen one more time?
So again, this is the first of the series. This one is Surveying the Leadership Landscape, Indispensable Qualities of Leadership. And here we look at some indispensable, what I see as some indispensable qualities of leadership. So this is the first in the series. The sequel to that book is this new one. This is the latest. It's also Surveying the Leadership Landscape. And here, this is Essential Characteristics of Leadership. And what we do with this, again, is basically what we've discussed tonight. We looked at Nehemiah's life and his journey to Jerusalem from Susa. We put it through the prism of four characteristics of leadership: learning how to lead yourself, being right with God, know who you are and whose you are so that you're not defined by anybody. Learn how to lead up the people who you are accountable to. Learn how to lead your contemporaries or your equals laterally. Then learn how to lead the one area that we're all familiar with. Learn how to lead down.
All right. Thank you. And I'm Pastor Red, and this is Gracious Hope Podcast. Until next time, stay anchored in Christ and lead where God has placed you. Until we meet again, thank you so much for joining us. And may God richly bless you. And I want to thank all of you for making a lot of comments here today. Some of you are here from Liberia and other places in the United States. Uh, Someone is asking Dr. Reeves, what is the cost of that book?
Um, this the hard we have a hard copy on Amazon. That hard copy, I think, on Amazon, it may be about 30. If you buy the hard copy, for me is 50. I think this is about 20. The soft cover is about 20, 25. If you buy it on Amazon, if you buy it from me, it's 40.
Yeah, so you can get it from a church, Providence Baptist
Yes,
Church.
yes, yes, yes. Baptist.
Copy is there. You can get it for $50, and on Amazon it should be lower than that. You can order
Yes.
if you live in the United States or any other country that you are watching us from. Get a copy and understand some of the nugget of wisdom that Dr. Reeves is sharing with the world, and it's all about the glory of Christ. Thank you so much for all of you who tune in. And until next time, please share our link with your friends, your families, and your loved ones and your community groups. Until then, we'll see you again. We'll say bye for now. Bye for now.